Good morning and welcome to the Holy Land today. Today, we turn our hearts toward one of the most remarkable national stories in modern history, Israel Independence Day, or you could say it in Hebrew, Yom HaHatzot. In 2026, Israel marks 70 years of statehood. This is not just a birthday celebration, it is a national testimony. It is a story of a people scattered across the nations, scarred by exile, persecution, and the Holocaust. It is recently a nation that has been attacked by people shouting for their annihilation, that they would be pushed from the river to the sea. And yet, this nation has sustained national life in their ancient homeland. In Israel, this day begins only after one of the most solemn observations on their calendar, Yom HaZikaron, which is Israel's Memorial Day. That transition matters. Israel does not celebrate independence as though it came cheaply. The nation moves from tears to thanksgiving, from gravesides to flags, from mourning to music. That emotional movement is part of Israel's identity itself. To understand Independence Day, we have to go back to 1948 and even before 1948. The Jewish people maintained an unbroken connection to the land of Israel through biblical memory, prayer, pilgrimage, and continuous Jewish presence, even through long centuries when many of them were dispersed to the nation. This dispersion was prophesied in the Old Testament. And in the modern era, that historic bond took political form in Zionism, a movement for Jewish national restoration. The Balfour Declaration of 1917, the League of Nations mandate system, and the trauma of European anti-Semitism all shaped the international context. Then came the Holocaust, the destruction of 6 million Jews, and the post-war refugee crisis. After World War II, hundreds of thousands of Jewish displaced persons were left in camps and transit conditions across Europe. The urgency of Jewish refuge was no longer theoretical. It was painfully immediate. The United Nations voted on November 28, 1947, for partition, recommending the establishment of a Jewish state alongside an Arab state. On May 14, 1948, as the British mandate ended, David Ben-Gurion read the Declaration of Establishment of the State of Israel. That declaration is still stunning to read. It rooted the state in Jewish history, in natural right, and in international recognition. It also pledged that the state of Israel would ensure equality of social and political rights to all its inhabitants, irrespective of religion, race, or sex, and guaranteed freedom of religion, conscience, language, education, and culture. That promise remained central to how many Israelis and supporters of Israel understand the nation's democratic calling even while debates continue about how fully and fairly that promise is realized in practice. I wanted to take this time to point out that the United States of America's history demonstrates that our founding fathers, that they supported Israel. I have a graph here that I want to pull up. That I didn't include in my deck, but I really feel it's important for you to see it now. This slide, it shows U.S. support for Israel going back to before the founding of the United States. Here you can see George Washington, the first president of the United States of America, making statements and a pledge. It's based on the Bible. It's based on an understanding that the freedom that America experiences, that the liberty from religious persecution was something that they tied to Israel long before that nation was established. The United States has supported Israel from its beginning. And now, so when we think about this democratic calling that we've embraced as Americans and that Israel embraces today, how many Jews lived in the land at the moment of statehood in 1948? At the time that Israel was established, there were roughly 806,000 people who considered themselves Jews. 806,000 population at the time of 1948. This was not something that was established and then they ran in. There has been a continuous presence of Jewish people in this promised land. In the years immediately following independence, one of the greatest migration waves in modern history transformed the country. Israeli and related historical sources note that about 687,000 Jewish immigrants arrived between 1948 and 1951, nearly doubling the young state's Jewish population in just a few years. Many of them were Holocaust survivors from Europe. Many others came from Arab and Muslim lands where Jewish communities were increasingly under pressure or fleeing violence and instability. The United States Holocaust Memorial Museum notes that beginning in May 1948, tens of thousands of Holocaust survivors rebuilt their lives in the newly established state of Israel. That means the story of independence is inseparable from the story of rescue, refuge, and aliyah. Aliyah being the Hebrew word for going up, returning. But independence was declared into war, not peace. The conflict that began immediately after statehood is known as the 1948 Arab-Israeli War. Called by Israelis the War of independence. Even before May 14th, there had already been civil war fighting between Jewish and Arab communities in mandatory Palestine after the UN partition. Once the state was declared, neighboring Arab armies entered the conflict. Egypt, Transjordan, Syria, Lebanon, and Iraq all became involved. The war was existential for the new state. Israel survived, expanded beyond the UN partition lines, and secured armistice agreements in 1949, but at a terrible cost. You can imagine from looking at this map, as a young nation just declared statehood, and your neighbors mobilize immediately to attack. For Israelis, the war confirmed that the state would have to defend its existence from its first day. For Palestinians, the same war, is tied to Nakba, or catastrophe, and mass displacement. Any historically serious account has to acknowledge that Israelis celebrate independence while Palestinian members dispossession from the same period. From there, the story becomes one of nation building under pressure. In 1948, Israel was a teeny state with scarce resources, absorbing immigrants from Europe, the Middle East, North Africa, and later, the former Soviet Union, Ethiopia, and many other parts of the world. That's right. Independence Day reflects on all of this constant battle. But this is not something new to Israel. If we see the Jewish people going back to the time of the Bible, you can't help but read Exodus and all the books of the Bible and see how Israel has had to fight for its existence. From there, with this nation under pressure, today we actually see on the eve of 78th Independence Day, the country has grown to over 10.2 million people, more than 12 times the population at independence. The current official breakdown released from this memorial celebration is that there's roughly 76% Jews and others 21% Arab and 2%, 3% foreigners. That population story itself is one of the great visual opportunities. We see the growth chart beginning at 806,000 in 1948 and rising to 10.2 million in 2026. It has always been Jewish people living with Arab people, citizens, Jewish citizens, Arab citizens, and foreign residents from the very beginning. You can see from this visual the Prime Minister's timeline. Since independence, Israel has been led by a succession of prime ministers, beginning with David Ben-Gurion, followed by Moshe Sharett, Levi Eshkol, Golda Meir, a woman, Yitzhak Rabin, Menachem Begin, Yitzhak Shamir, Shimon Peres, Ehud Barak, Ariel Sharon, Ehud Olmert, Benjamin Netanyahu, Naftali Bennett, and Yair Lapid, with some, like the current Prime Minister, Benjamin Netanyahu, serving multiple terms. An on-screen gallery of each prime minister helps you see Israel's national story has not been static. It has moved through laborious Zionism, wars, peace initiatives, economic transformation, coalition instability, judicial battles, and intense ideological divisions, all within an electoral system that continues to rotate power through parties and coalitions. It is a functioning democracy, and it's only 78 years old. I think it's important for us to look at how Israel compares with their neighbors, how Israel compares with the democracy that we celebrate in the United States. I've had the privilege of driving through this town of Tel Aviv that you can see highlighted in this slide. It is a metropolis. It is a modern city. And there are several, just like it, throughout Israel. That brings us to the big question many Christians and many viewers ask. Is Israel the only democracy in the region? The careful answer is this. Israel is widely regarded as the region's strongest and most established electoral democracy, meaning that the citizens vote and that the vote actually means something. The Freedom House, in its 2025 report, rates Israel free, describing it as a parliamentary democracy with multi-party competition and independent institutions. In the same set of regional comparisons, just a few, Jordan is rated partly free, Lebanon is partly free, Saudi Arabia is not free. So when people call Israel the Middle East's only democracy, they're usually making a shorthand point about the country's comparative political freedoms and electoral institutions. Elections is important. I mean, I know we struggle. Here in the United States, we struggle with this concept of free elections. Strictly speaking, the slogan that Israel is the only democracy in the region oversimplifies a complicated region, but comparatively, Israel still stands out sharply in the neighborhood on standard democracy metrics. Now, this slide does not show their other neighbors. I challenge you to go to the freedom metrics for Iraq, Syria, Iran, Turkey, Egypt. It's even worse. The neighbors around Israel are not free nations. They do not have functional democracies. Well, what about the freedom of religion? Israel's founding declaration explicitly promises freedom of religion and conscience, and the legal system protects many forms of worship. Jews, Muslims, Christians, Druze, and others worship openly And Israel contains holy sites sacred to all three Abrahamic faiths. At the same time, the real picture is more complex than the slogan. The United States Department's International Religious Freedom Reporting notes that both legal protection and ongoing tensions, disputes over holy sites, and incidents affecting religious communities, that exists. But the law of the land, the legal system, and the culture of Israelis is clearly freedom of religion is what they stand on. Israel has real and substantial religious freedom protections written into its national vision and legal order. But the practice of religious freedom in the land, so holy and contested, remains an ongoing challenge. Now, these are things that I have witnessed myself. Last time that I was in Israel, met with a Armenian family, lovely family, third generation guest house in the old city of Jerusalem. 18-year-old William showed me my room, and I began to ask him what it was like for him as an Armenian, as a Christian, living in the old city of Jerusalem. And he shared that recently he had been attacked by Orthodox Jews. More like what I may have experienced when I was 16, 17 years old and was picked on and bullied, pushed around, beat up because I was different from the kids that I went to high school with. These things happen, but they wouldn't live anywhere else. After the Armenian genocide, their family came to Israel. They enjoy education, the ability to start businesses, and to move around the country freely, very much as we do in the United States. That is not the case in the neighboring countries. Another question: is the status of women higher in Israel than in neighboring nations? Well, you wonder, what do you think? Broadly speaking, on many measures, the answer is yes, though not without caveats. Israel elected Golda Meir as prime minister decades ago. Women serve in parliament, on the Supreme Court, in business, academia, and many parts of public life. And women's employment indicates that they're relatively strong present by regional standards. Again, you have to look at the neighborhood. I double dog dare you to jump up and move to any of those other surrounding countries. As an American, as a woman, it will become starkly clear the freedoms that women enjoy and how they advance, how outspoken they are in Israel. Current comparative data shows women hold about 25.8% of the seats in the Knesset being the parliament, the seat of government. And OECD data place women's employment in Israel at 58.3%. Wait a minute. Women's employment is 58.3%? Wow, those are comparable to any developed nations. Now, Israel is not perfect. And Israel society still debates exclusion, religious coercion, workplace gaps, and representation. But at least there's a debate going on. Do you think there is a debate going on in Iran? No. Women are forced to dress in black if they come out in public. They do not have religious freedoms at all. In Iran, it's illegal to be anything but Muslim. And many of the states surrounding Israel, this is the case. Do you understand why there's a war going on? Do you understand why Israel's neighbors attack her repeatedly, threaten her? I would present that this is not propaganda. It's a measurable, comparative reality with room for honest critique. So, what does Independence Day look like on the ground? After a solemn ceremony, let's see. After a solemn close of their independence ceremony, the atmosphere changes. Israeli homes, parks, and public spaces fill with flags. Families gather for barbecues and picnics. Wow. Next year, I want to be there during Israel Independence Day. You know what that looks like for me? That looks like me flying into Israel, Ben Gurion Airport, renting a car from a number of different outlets that I can rent a car from, and driving pretty much anywhere I want to in the country. Are there checkpoints? Yes, there are security checkpoints. And if it's not safe, then the military, the police, the IDF, they guide you to another alternative path to drive to get to your destination. No one ever challenges me. They look at me wondering where I'm from. And as soon as I open my mouth and start speaking, they know that I'm an American. And I receive unanimous support from Orthodox Jews, secular Jews, Arabs, Palestinians that are living in Israel. I am warmly welcomed. I enjoy that freedom in this country. During Independence Day, cities host public performances, and one of the most recognizable symbols of the day is the Air Force flyover, which captures both celebration and vigilance. This is not an accident. Israel's independence has always carried a dual message: gratitude for survival and readiness for defense. Even today, the ceasefire could end any day. But my friends are outside and they're enjoying the malls in the evenings, and they are enjoying the celebration. For believers watching today, Israel independence is not simply a lesson in geopolitics. It is a reminder that history can turn, that a scattered people can be regathered, that national resurrection is not an abstract idea in the Bible alone, and that modern Israel continues to occupy a unique place in Jewish life, biblical imagination, and world affairs. Wow. Chaim Israel. What a journey. What a journey. Happy 78th anniversary to Israel. Happy 78th to Israel. And we're committed. Kojic Israel, Department of Women, we are committed to serving in the Holy Land. I resonate when I hear the words Haim, Am Israel Haim, meaning Israel live. Amos 9:15, I will plant them on their land, and they shall never again be uprooted out of the land that I have given them, says the Lord your God. Wow, the only nation in the world that God set aside to demonstrate his covenant-keeping heart. All of us who follow God Almighty, all of us who have accepted the sacrifice that Jesus made, which grafts us into this covenant, all of us who really understand Israel's unique role. It's just amazing to live in times where we see this today. So on this Yom HaAtzmaut, on this Independence Day, we remember the Declaration, the war that followed, the immigrants who came with little more than faith and trauma, the leaders who governed, the citizens who built, and the fallen who made celebration possible. We remember that Israel's independence is not only a date on a calendar, it is a living national drama. And for those of us who love the Holy Land, pray for the peace of Jerusalem, and watch Israel closely in this hour of history, it is also a day to reflect on resilience, covenant, survival, and responsibility. We are planning to go to Israel with a small group to serve, to put our arms around the Israelis, Jews and Arabs, and non-Jews and non-Arabs, as in the case of our Armenian friends. We are going to visit the elderly and support food rescue and evaluate how we can support those that are traumatized. Our team includes nurses and people with military background. I am looking forward to returning to Israel and staying there as long as possible. There is so much work to do. And I am answering the call, and many of us are answering the call in the Holy Land, in the land of the Bible. Would you stand with me and pray for the peace of Jerusalem? It's the only place where God promises that he will bless you that bless them. And it's the only place that Jesus has promised to return. Happy 78th Independence Day to the people and the nation of Israel.